Hi, I'm Angified. I started Angified Presents.
We share the love of music.
It has been medicine and therapy. Nothing else worked.
It has saved many of us. With mental health, we need to open our eyes.
Hurt people hurt people.
We ask that you listen, comprehend, and relate with your ears.
Form that heart of unity and one.
We share on this stage.
Statistics, feelings,
And ourselves.
we stand with the belief to be you, to be heard, and to be original.
We all may be different, with opinions and beliefs.
At the end of the day, we are all brothers and sisters.
We are family.
We ask that you join us in a magical journey with artists from around the world. Open your minds, let in the love.
And listen with your hearts.
We all want a better tomorrow. Be one.
Communicate and look out for one another. And then, and only then, will you find the world.
We will find peace in all the world.
You'll find the world. And you will find in this shining world heroes among us in every boy and girl. Many have been broken, red hearts turn black. Love will melt the ice and turn it back, and you will find the world. You will find the world. You will find the world. And when you find a place called home, where everyone is free to roam, a whole new world, a better place for our children's futures at stake. And you'll find with music in your soul, laughter in your hearts. Together we can grow a better place with love in our soul. And you will find together we can save it all. And you will find a place called home, where
talking about it all every Thursday night. From software to plugins and synths that entice. Dive deep into tech and let creativity take flight. Talking IT. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. From bedroom producers to seasoned pros, we're breaking it down so knowledge grows. Whether you're a DJ or a beat making wizard, we got the tips and tricks to make your sound sizzle. Mixing and mastering, that's our jam. With the tutorials and tips on how much rap. Get the best quality from your setup and gear. Tune in every week and lend us your ear. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. We're talking IT. We're talking IT. Every Thursday night on Angified.
Yes, indeed.
We're talking IT.
On Thursday night.
Oh, I talk it every night, but
Yeah.
Thursdays are special.
Thursday, we all talk it together.
Oh, and to give a special shout out to our July babies, because we got a couple of them in the family. Jason Jacobs, the Metal King, happy birthday. Jeremy Hurt, Upside of Hurt, happy birthday. And tomorrow, my buddy Lou Nice, another birthday. Seems like everybody's making babies in December.
I wonder how that happened.
You got to stay warm somehow.
Yeah, that's one way.
But we've got an interesting topic tonight. Something we've talked about, like not necessarily on the show, but we talk about all the time in the back. And it's a little bit of theory, it's a little bit of songwriting, all together. Music rules are meant to be chosen.
Yes.
Because I can debate about whether they're meant to be broken, but we're going to talk about some of these musical rules tonight and why you don't want to just like follow them blindly in the music making process and why you should at least understand where some rules apply.
And it's like when we talked about some of the different styles of different composers, for example. There's certain things that they would do with counterpoint, or certain things that they do at certain times, certain chord progressions, certain particular melodies, whatever. There's certain things that they do. You wouldn't call them tricks or techniques or whatever, but just different things that are signature to their style. But they don't do them all the time. They throw them in there and sprinkle them in like spices because it's not supposed to be the entire thing. It's just supposed to be part of it. So.
Yeah, and I like to think of them more as tricks and tips than rules, and that's actually going to be a little theme in some of the ones we're going to look at here. We'll jump to the cave and see what we're going to look at. Change the view, and there we go. So. The first one, gonna ask the simple question of, are there rules in music? And Nathan James Larson, channel we've been to for some of our theory nights, asks the important first question about, are there rules in music? Some musicians seem to think, no, I'm a rule breaker and that's that. And he's gonna talk about it from both sides there.
And in certain cases, it depends on the rule. But, some rules are much more, likely to be broken or much more breakable, let's say, than others. Because some rules, they're there for a good reason,
What I like with musical rules is they tend to be malleable. You can adjust them a little bit here and there, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to write.
Yep, exactly.
And then we're going to go to the samurai guitar. It's been a while since we visited over here, and I just loved the title. And I was like, I always love his videos, making music that breaks all the rules. And sometimes it's fun to challenge yourself that way.
Oh yeah. I do remember one part of a Victor Wooten video where he was only playing the wrong notes. Like they get a groove going in a certain key, and they get that's the key, and you're using those 7 notes. So he just played his entire thing using none of those 7 notes. He only used the other 5. So it was like you can do whatever you want, but
Yeah.
it does sound very weird. But you're playing out. That's all. Instead of playing in, you're playing out, and ear feels it, but that's one of those things where you don't want to live there, but you can go there for that effect.
And when you're an artist like him, your fans sort of expect you to break the rules now and then, because if you're wild enough, then it's like the guy behind you, Jimmy, broke a fuck ton of rules, and
And
it
again, just
sounded awesome.
yeah, it's about the style at that point. Just own that sound. Like if you're gonna do that thing, own it.
Yep. So Samurai is gonna break the rules. It kind of reminded me of when Jake Zeke did that cliche song.
Yeah.
After we covered the lyric that week, and he's like, "What do you mean you shouldn't use cliches in songs? I'm gonna make a whole song with them."
And it depends on the genre too, because I mean, you can't make a country song without using cliches of some kind somewhere, right?
You should use at least one in a country
At least a
song.
couple.
And then we're going to slide to the arranging side a little bit, because I talk a lot about arrange. To me, arrangement is as important as composition. You kind of can't be good at one without being good at the other. And what he's talking about here, the Lego approach to arranging,
Yep.
and how to kind of get out of that sometimes, because sometimes I do feel like I'm arranging like I would build a Lego house.
Yeah. And the thing is, it can be good. It can be a time saver. It can help you get certain ideas out and, into a form that you can now work with. But at the same time, if you overuse it, it can be like, okay, here's brick A, here's brick B. Oh, here comes brick A again, and like if it's too predictable, your ear is expecting it, and that can be a good thing. It sounds familiar, it sounds comfortable, but it can also sound like a cliche. So that's where you end up with, you got to strike the right balance there.
Yeah, predictable can be a double-edged sword in songwriting. And it's nice to predict a chorus that you just heard, and it's coming back, and that feels comfortable to a listener. But at the same time, if everything feels predictable, it's like I think I heard this song before from someone else.
And hopefully your song has some changes in it at that point, so there is a surprise here or there, or it takes you somewhere else, because sometimes it's just if it's going to be 3.5 minutes of nothing surprising and just the same thing over and over again, that's going to get old a lot faster than 3.5 minutes. So
Yeah. So Minosaur Freshy Channel is gonna talk about his 20 years of arrangement advice in 10 minutes. And I wish I knew these things when I started 20 years ago, 30 years ago. God.
yeah, and like you said, even if even one or two of these ideas can help break you out of a particular thing, like a lot of it comes down to also like a loop. Sometimes people are just trying to make they make a song, and it just turns into, oh, I've got this loop and I want to make it into a song, and they just turn that loop into 8 copies of that loop, and now it's a song. It's like, that's not really how
and that's kind of how he's going to start out. He's going to show like, this is what I was typically doing, and then show how to break out of that box a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And lyric writing as well. Ange is working on a new show, Breaking the Barriers, and they're gonna start really looking into lyrics and good lyric writing. And I thought this was a nice addition here. How to write songs, not a freshie for us. When we have done our songwriting nights, this channel kicks ass.
Oh, yeah.
This lyric writing trick is 4,000 years old, and it's easy. And as you think about writing over the last 4,000 years, it's going to start to like, wow, it's almost common sense, but you kind of have to realize it in order to utilize it.
Yeah, exactly.
And to finish off, a review on a new piece of software, a new MIDI sequencer, which I go back to the 80s when it comes to sequencing, but the thing I've always hated with sequencing, especially step sequencing, I've told you, For piano, I don't feel like it's natural when I'm like popping stuff up in a grid, and I feel like I lose some of that natural style that I do when I'm playing on a piano. And this looks interesting because it's Stellarizer. It's designed to bridge between that performance approach and that step sequencing approach in a sequencer that kind of blends the ease of both. And if it does solve that problem, I'd like to actually sequence more that way, but I want it to feel natural, like what I actually play.
Yeah. And that's the thing is when we talked about the Lego approach, like, Lego approach for chords is one thing. And then it's more of a crayon approach for, trying to write things in a piano roll, or it might be like, C, E, G, whatever. Like, you're drawing it in, like you're crayoning it in, the actual notes. And if you change the intensity there, that's where you can get the more performative or the more emotive, performance out of it, by instead of having it just always be the same, either fully pressed or fully not pressed note, you get some variation in how strong, how hard or soft you're hitting the notes.
Dynamics.
Gotta have it.
Yeah. Well, to get started, we're going to talk about rules. And Nathan James Larson at Nathan James Larson is going to help us to establish, are there rules? Some say no. I think most of us who have had to do music theory and all that stuff say yes, but, and there's always a but after the music theory debate. And Nathan's going to help us to look at it from both perspectives there.
Yeah. I mean, there are rules, there are guidelines, there are do's and don'ts, there are exceptions. I mean, that's, the way things work. But yes, I am a strong believer of rules in general.
I spent a lot of years learning them, and then spent even more years not unlearning them, but compartmentalizing them and saying, like, when do I really need to follow this rule, and when can I just go have fun and see what sticks on the wall?
Exactly.
So, Nathan, let's solve this question. Are there rules in music?
I recently made a video talking about the rule of three, which is a concept of music that you can trace back literally centuries in music history. But I got multiple comments in that video that said something to the effect of, there are no rules in music. And this is something I hear musicians saying all the time, that there are no rules in music. And the truth is that it's bogus. Of course there are rules in music. And I'm not only going to explain it in this video, but I'm actually going to prove it to you by demonstration. But before you go roast me in the comments without actually watching the video, here's the catch. The word rules means something different in music than what we often think of when we hear the word rules. So I'm gonna have to unpack this a bit for you to understand, but if you don't have the patience to hear me out, you can, go watch a cat video or scroll TikTok and turn your brain to mush instead. So the word rule implies that it is steadfast or unchangeable or rigid, and a handful of other words that simply just mean that we often think of rules as harsh and unbreakable. But in music, the word rules means something more like guidelines and principles to abide by. But under certain circumstances, these rules are breakable and can be broken creatively, or there are rules that can override other rules. However, some of these rules are there on purpose and by design, and they will sound bad if broken basically no matter what you do. And that's obviously with an asterisk that says I'm sure you can find plenty of examples where it does work. But don't just take my word for it. Let's actually take a look at some examples to prove to you how ridiculous the idea of saying there are no rules is. If there are in fact no rules in music, then that means that we can basically do whatever we want, right? Okay, so let's actually play this out and see how it goes. That means that I should be able to play really any chord progression with any chords and it'll sound great, right? So let's just go ahead and try this. Let's try C major, F sharp minor, B flat major, and E major. Let's try that in a 4-chord progression. So I could have told you before I even played that it was probably not going to sound very good. And it doesn't really sound that great. Of course, if they were doing like a film score where it's supposed to be super moody and it's supposed to feel like disjunct like that, sure, that could work. But why doesn't this actually sound that great within the context of more modern pop music? And the reason is because you can't just play any random chord with any other random chord and expect it to sound good. So that alone disproves the idea that there are no rules, because if there are no rules, then anything should sound good. But that's obviously not the case. Not anything sounds good, which means there are some guidelines as to why that did not sound good. And that particular example did not sound very good because none of these chords are in the same key signature or are sharing the same scale, meaning that we're playing chords that have zero relationship to each other, at least a relationship that makes sense. However, if I play C major, F major, A minor, and G major together, it's going to sound good, and I know it will sound good before I ever play a note. Let's check it out. See, that sounds great, and musically it makes sense, and we're very familiar with a progression like that. But why? It's because each of these chords contain notes that are shared amongst each other in the scale of C major. All the white keys in this case. So I'm not using any notes that are outside of that. In other words, I wasn't using any of the black notes. And that right there is actually a musical rule. Chords that share notes in common with each other within the same scale, they're gonna sound good together. And on the opposite spectrum, the rule is that chords that do not share notes in common with each other, because they come from different scales, will typically not sound very good together. Now again, typically. But this rule is only partially true, because we can actually manipulate this rule, and we could temporarily borrow notes from other scales. Like, for example, we could use an F minor chord within the C major progression, which in an F minor chord, we're gonna have an A flat, which does not exist in the scale of C major. So let me just show you, since maybe that doesn't really make too much sense without me actually playing it within the context of a progression. So we can play that same progression, something similar to it, with C major, A minor, and then G major. And then instead of doing this, of playing an F major, we could actually do this and play an F minor. So here's the whole progression together. Now that sounds great. It sounds very different, right? There's a lot of tension between that F minor and that C major chord. There's a lot of pull to it. That F minor wants to resolve to that C major, but yet that A flat in the A minor chord doesn't exist within the C major scale. So that brings me to the point that I made earlier. These rules can be creatively broken, but even in this case, we're not really breaking a rule. I'm just actually following another rule of music that overrides that first rule that I mentioned, that you can temporarily borrow chords from the opposite scale to create what is called mode mixture. In other words, if I play an F major chord like this, right, like I've said before, and if I flip it to minor, like this is borrowing the A flat from now the C minor scale, which is the relative minor to C major, which is the scale that we've been in. So remember that we're in a C major scale, or a C major progression. All of those notes are usable, but I can actually take the relative minor scale, C minor, which has 3 flats, E flat, A flat, and B flat, and I can now use these together and temporarily use notes from that minor scale within the context of a major chord progression, like I did with that F minor chord. So by quote unquote breaking that rule of using chords with notes that aren't in the C major scale, it wasn't really breaking the rule at all. It was just using another rule that can override the first rule, and I can do it creatively. And I know this is a lot to take in, especially if you're not familiar with this. Now I could actually do this again and actually take that G major chord and do the exact same thing by making it minor as well. Again, this is going to be using mode mixture, borrowing from that C minor scale. It's the same rule we just talked about. So this rule is not like a firm and set in stone rule. It's a principle of music that can be broken creatively, but you wouldn't want to do that unless this is the sound you actually want. So here's using that G minor chord instead within this C major progression. Oh, and before I play this, I'm just going to say this because I already know this before even playing it, that by playing that G minor chord, it's going to give a sense of mystery, of awestruck wonder, if you will. And I know that because I know how it's going to sound. just like that. So here's a question. How did I know that I could do that? And how did I know that before I even played that G minor chord that it was going to sound the way it was going to sound? The reason is because I know the rules. If there are no rules in music, then music is not knowable. Does that make sense? If there are no rules in music, then you can't learn music, because the only way you can learn something is if you have a basis of guidelines to learn from. You can't really use music or write music in a way that is structured or makes sense without having guidelines to follow. The idea that there are no rules suggests that music is purely emotional and there is no fundamental principle that guides music making. But here's the thing. Throughout history, the most brilliant composers, Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, Stravinsky, Rachmaninoff, and literally thousands more, these composers knew the rules. They understood these rules, and with each era of music throughout history, from Baroque to classical to romantic to post-romantic, all the way to where we are today, each era was discovering new ways to manipulate and understand the rules of music. So in the era of Bach, for example, you're not going to find certain musical characteristics that you would find in the classical era. And in the romantic era, that took it even further than the classical with chromaticism. But each of these are building on top of the other by utilizing the rules they already understand. And I know this might be getting a bit deep, it might be getting a bit heady, but it's important to understand where we come from and how we got to where we are to understand how crazy saying there are no rules in music actually is, because literally no composer throughout history has believed that until the last handful of decades. In fact, young composers throughout history were typically taught music theory to learn how to compose, which is just learning the rules. So why does this actually matter? Well, it matters because we can explain the why and the how behind musical decisions. If there are no rules, then I wouldn't know how to compose different emotions by using different chord progressions or using different scales unless I was just guessing or following natural instinct. And I want to be really clear here. There are some people with extraordinary gifts to play music they don't even understand. So this 100% happens, and to deny it is absurd, right? But to say that this is the norm is also absurd. These people are outliers. They're not the norm. Like, I knew a musician in college who could play insanely complex gospel piano that was just ridiculously beautiful. And I remember asking him, what are you doing? Like, what are you playing? How are you doing this? And he said, I have no clue. I just play. And that right there is not normal. That is not typical. And if you believe that this is just how it is, that some people have it and some people just don't, then that's actually very discouraging, to be honest with you. How is that encouraging to believe that some people are destined to be musically gifted and others, well, sorry, sucks for you. You're just not. This is also not to ignore that some people do have that musical gifting that is not normal. But the reality is that music is learnable. It is something you can learn and improve. So I think you get the point. The truth is that there are rules in music. This does not mean that music is void of emotion or somehow learning there's rules means that you will somehow lose your soul to the evil devil that is called music theory. Instead, learning the rules is about deepening an understanding of the nature of music, because these rules exist whether you know them or not. Think about that for a moment. They exist outside of you, which means that by learning them, you are opening your mind to a discovery of how music works. It's like pulling the curtain back and seeing all the beautiful features that make up music, from scales to chords to melody to rhythm and more. Without learning how music works, then it really does feel like guessing. And I know for me, I don't really feel like making music is about guessing. I want to make music that I understand, and I want to create music that pulls at the heartstrings in some cases, or perhaps gives off this epic feeling in others, but I don't want it to feel random. And what's funny is that all the people who actually think there are no rules in music find themselves following the rules unknowingly, which is actually kind of ironic. I hope this helps you see that music is something you can learn and understand. It isn't some mystical thing that abides by no rules or sense. And with that, I encourage you to delve into the world of learning how music actually works. If there's a topic that you actually want me to cover on this topic of music, let me know in the comments, because I do want to be making more videos on this channel oriented around overall musicianship.
Oh, I love how he explained all of it.
Exactly.
And the comparison between like the savant who can just play everything and not even know what they're, and I have run into that.
Yeah, for sure.
A handful of musicians in my life that were just like amazing and had no idea what they were doing. They just did it. But to his counterpoint there, you know, it is learnable. And for those who really do want to be able to do that, and it's not a natural inclination, it is still possible to play that way.
And to me, the people who do play that way, the where they just, you know, immediately just come out sounding incredible and they don't know what they're doing, to me, if they did learn some theory, they would be that much more incredible, because they would understand why, or they would understand better how to communicate what they're doing to someone else. Even like in that scenario there, you know, someone asking how you did that and you can't explain it to them, that doesn't help them at all, right? So like they can't do anything with that. But if you were able to say, oh, well, I'm going from the 1 to the 4 and I'm borrowing the minor 4, like there, like that would actually be something they could try to replicate, you know, and try to use that technique in the future. So to me, even if it only helps to help communicate better about it, I would say it's worth learning for that. By
Yeah,
itself.
and it's possible that somebody who does play that way to shove the theory into them, especially if they're not receptive to it, could fuck up some of that exploratory approach that we sometimes take, you know?
One thing I will say is the more I learned additional instruments, the more I got back to the way it was learning, as a kid, where I'm not afraid to just make mistakes and sound terrible and just try stuff and see what it sounds like. Because, playing harmonica and playing, I played trumpet when I was a kid, and I play piano and I play guitar and I play bass and I play drums and all that. Like I can play a bunch of different things. And as I do, music theory like carries through, or everything translates back. For me, everything translates back to piano and C major and A minor, and working through that, and then going with all the black keys and going with the pentatonics that are there, just figuring out and having everything translate back to that makes it easier for me to then transpose to something else.
That was another example he gave there. The relative mind. I need to bone up on my C minor because I love that shift between C major and C minor if you use it the way he did.
Yeah, and you're using 3 of the 5 black notes, and that means that you can just know that it's the B flat, the E flat, and the A flat, because they go in that order as you're adding the flats. So when you're playing a chord that has 3 flats, it's going to be the B flat, the E flat, and the A flat.
Well, and it goes back to the relational. When it comes to the key shifts like that, if you know what's related, then you kind of get a hint on where you can go and where you shouldn't expect things to sound good.
In this case, it's a great place to experiment, is taking something where he started with just a 1-6-4-5 or a 1-6-5-4, whatever, just starting with something very basic that everyone's heard before. You recognize it. All the chords sound great. And 3 of those chords are major. All he did was, using just borrowing the minor chords. So playing a G minor, playing an F minor, playing a C minor, and seeing how it sounds, trying it out in the context of the progression you're playing, and see which one you would want to borrow, or borrow 2 of them, or borrow all 3. You can have the whole thing shift completely minor by doing that, but it's almost better just to take that as an adventure away from what you were doing, off into the minor and back, and you're recentering back to where you started.
Yeah. I like that advice. I respect the rules, and I'm glad that we have some workarounds now and then, because it does give that kind of mystery. If you're looking for those certain things like he was talking about, then knowing this stuff is how film scores and good dramatic music gets made.
Yeah, for sure. Good emotional shifts. And again, don't be afraid to try different things out, try different chords in there, throw a minor chord here where it's a major chord, or vice versa, and see what it sounds like as a little, diversion from what you were doing.
Yep. And check out Nathan James Larson over on YouTube if you want to explore and up your home studio producing.
Nice.
Hey, Paul, welcome. I'm doing good.
Chill.
So, now we're going to shift to Samurai guitarist. I love this guy. We go here on our guitar nights, and he shows us freaky guitars from all over the place, and studio tips and production tips. But for this one, I couldn't ignore the title, Making Music That Breaks All the Rules. That's what we're talking about tonight.
Exactly.
Well, first we figured out some of the rules, and now we're going to figure out how to break them a little bit. At Samurai Guitarist, all you guitarists out there, you've probably been here. Love his guitar channel.
Absolutely.
And we're going to start looking at ways to break the rules that will probably be cool if I know how he plays them.
Through years and years of trial and error, countless guidelines for creating music were formed, and they're there for good reason, because if you don't play by these rules, your music will sound rather strange. I found myself wondering what it would sound like if we threw some of these things that we take for granted to the wind. So today I'm going to be making music that defies all typical expectation. To start off, let's take a melody we all know and love. Here's my basic rendition of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. There we have the melody played as plainly as possible. The chords are the obvious choices, and the bass and drums are laying down a standard rhythm. Before we can start messing with it, we need to look at what defines this song. First, we have the melody played on guitar. That's the main line sung over top, the star of the show, the part that typically goes, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Then we have the harmony, which provides the landscape the melody sits on top of. This role was fulfilled by the chords I played on piano, a chord being multiple notes played at the same time. Well, one of the key components of music is creating a togetherness between the melody and the harmony. Without that, it'll sound disjointed and wrong. One of the easiest ways to create this coherent relationship is by building the melody and the harmony from the same set of notes. This set of notes is called the key. Our key for this song is C major. All of my notes in this song are going to be one of those 7 different notes. To further create synchronization between the harmony and melody, I'll make sure that the chord I'm playing contains the melody note within it. This is the common expectation, but we're going to flip this around. Let's see what it sounds like when we take chords from the same key as the melody that don't contain the melody note within them. Definitely a little bit weirder than it was before. To my ear, it sounds like the melody and harmony are set in the same place, but they're trying to tell a different story. Moving on, let's reset our song back to the original version. Again, here we have 3 different chords, C, F, and G. But how do we pick which notes to put in these chords? To build a chord, we pick any note in our key. That becomes the root note, which is the foundation our entire chord is built off of. Once we have the root, we skip the next note in the scale, add the following note, skip the next note, and add the following note as well. These 3 notes give us what's called a triad, which is the most common type of chord we'll come across. We can repeat this process with any note in the key. But due to the nature of this video, what if we wanted to get weird with it? Instead of taking the root, the 3rd note, and the 5th note to make our chord, what if we took the root, the 2nd note, and the 7th note? This is what Twinkle Twinkle Little Star would sound like with those new chords. Pretty wacky, some moments worked better than others, and there's good reason for that. We need to be careful with how the melody interacts with the new notes in these new chords. See, if 2 notes are too close together in pitch, when played together they will sound gritty and harsh. Before, when all of our melody notes were already contained within the chords, we never had to worry about this. With these new notes, we need to be aware of how close they are to the melody notes, lest we risk sounding too dissonant, unless that happens to be the intended desire. Let's move on to something different here. Focus your attention now on the bass guitar and the role of that instrument. The bass will usually be holding down the fort by outlining the root note. In the examples so far, I've simply been playing the root as the chord comes along. This is what's commonly expected, but what happens if I play a different note of the chord with my bass part? Let's find out. Sounds a little odd at points, but not overly offensive to my ear. This is because our ear will instinctively perceive the lowest pitch as the root note. The bass note that I'm playing becomes the new home bass, and we kind of hear the entire thing as a different chord. Now what if we totally flipped around the role of the bass? So far it's been laying down the low note foundation while the guitar plays the melody over top. What if now we had the guitar playing the bass part and the bass playing the melody? Kind of cool to hear the bass part playing the melody. My problem though is it gets hidden and it's tough to hear. And while the guitar part is an interesting layer, it doesn't anchor down the song the way it would if it were played on the bass. Now let's move over to some rhythmic stuff. There is a central pulse that remains steady throughout the entire song. The pulse is felt in 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The strongest, most emphasized beat in this pulse is the first one followed by the third. So it makes sense that the chords would change on those beats. Well, as per the nature of this video, let's mess with that expectation. Here's what it sounds like if the chords change on the second and fourth beat, essentially pushing them back one beat. Honestly, that sounds pretty cool. I don't think I would like to hear that for an entire song, but for one section that would be an interesting change that would perk up the ear. While we're on the subject of rhythm, let's see what the drummer's up to. The hi-hat is playing a steady stream of 2 hits on every beat while the kick and snare alternate beats. The snare is being hit on the second and fourth beat while the kick is being played on the first and third. This is about as typical of a pattern as we'll find. So what would happen if we switched around the placement of the kick and snare? Playing like that on most gigs will get you fired. Why is it so horrible, you ask? Well, it's due to the nature of the rhythm itself. I mentioned earlier that the first and third beats are the part of the meter that are the strongest. They naturally carry the most musical weight. Now, my snare drum is the most pronounced and obvious drum sound, so wouldn't it make sense to put it on those heavy beats? Well, by putting it on the weaker beats, we create syncopation, emphasizing parts of the bar that aren't normally emphasized. In doing so, we make it seem like the music has forward motion. When the snare is on the 1 and the 3, those beats become too heavy and nothing propels us through those weaker beats. The kick drum, on the other hand, has another role. Much like the bass guitar, it grounds the music without standing in the spotlight. By putting that on the naturally heavy beats, our music feels strong and sturdy. It's also quite common to put the kick drum on all 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In conclusion, the expectations we looked at today are obviously there for a reason. I deviated drastically from them and it didn't sound all that good. However, these are some of the more concrete guidelines. There are a lot of more lenient expectations you can do some great stuff with by not playing into. By understanding music theory, you can unlock a lot of these new tools. If you're interested in that, I'll put up some links in the description. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Content like this is made possible by the people who support me through my Patreon program. So to all of you, an especially big thank you. I've got monthly giveaways as well as a number of other unique rewards offered through that program, so please consider hitting that link over there and checking it out. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I've got 2 new videos every week coming out Mondays and Thursdays. Until next time, I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I will see you again soon.
Oh, he's a Thursday warrior too.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, and I'm gonna check out that psychology music video, Samurai, because I'm going through a psychology rabbit hole.
And I've always found music just always gets me, you know, like especially movie music, you know, watching movies. Like I don't have to be watching the movie. I don't have to know what's going on. I can just hear the music going on and I'll get swept up in the emotion of the whole movie. Just
shit, there's some movies I just watch to listen to the music.
Absolutely.
Well, I really liked his different examples there. And, you know, it's funny because some of those approaches to me don't sound bad. If you're trying to go for like a jazz kind of swing or, you know, something progressive, some of those beat shifting approaches or hitting on the second or third note, especially with the bass approach, that can work in special situations.
When he shifted the bass note to be basically hitting the third, or, you know, the third or the fifth of the chord rather than
I liked it.
It fits. I mean, it sounds nice. It just you do lose like the sound. The chords sound like a different context because your ear does automatically try to put that low note as the root of the chord, and then it just sounds like you're doing a weird chord from there.
Well, it feels more like you're kind of pushing the melody like a worm would. Like the bass is like pushing it and then pushing it under the actual melody.
Yeah, and actually, you would see that usually written, you know, if you're following along for a song, you'll see that written as slash chords. So like, you know, an A/G, you know, will be playing an A chord with a G under it, for example, but you know, G's not in that chord. But anyway, the idea being that, you know, you're using a different low note than what would normally be the low note for the chord.
Yeah. When he actually switched and he was right. Like it does make you feel like I should be hearing root notes there on that bass. But, you know, in a weird way, it can sound, it can throw someone off in a strategic way if you're using it in soundtrack. And like Cole says, accents are everything. Where the accents is where this rule breaking starts to come into play.
And also with the tension and release, where you're creating tension. Like when you go away from what you're expecting, when you everything that your ear is getting is the expected stuff, you're always at home base, right? So if you never get pulled away with that tension, then there's no release really from that. So like it's you pull away from it with that tension, and then boom, you come back home and there you go.
I want to resolve.
Exactly. Or you just leave it unresolved, leave it hanging. Like some songs will end and just leave you hanging there. You're like, oh. That's the worst. Like if you're going somewhere and somebody shuts off the car and you're like, music stops. Oh, right in the middle of the song.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go home now and listen to the song.
Got to hear the end.
Yeah. So, thank you, Samurai, for those examples. It's got me thinking I might actually be able to do some jazz if I take some of those rule-breaking approaches.
Yeah. And again, it's a good way to just break out of a box or a rut or whatever. Like if you find yourself sitting down to play the same stuff all the time, try stuff like that just to get a whole different feel. Like a little syncopation, slide that beat, see what happens.
Yep. And speaking of getting out of boxes, this next one is kind of a talk about that when it comes to arranging, because arranging is one of those things where like a lot of us songwriters have go-to approaches. It's a verse, it's a bridge, it's a chorus, it's a verse, it's a bridge, it's a chorus. And that's the kind of rule that fits for like modern radio approach. They like their recipes pretty standard, but at the same time, you throw in a double bridge like a Def Leppard song, and next thing you know, it's like, wow, I didn't expect that extension.
Yeah. And again, it depends who you're writing for also. If you're trying to get that familiar sound and you're trying to lock in a familiar format, Rolling Stones, sounds like a Stones song, format sounds like a Stones song, like that whole thing, there is that consistency factor and the fact that you would want to, have your signature sound, but at the same time, it is good to have, different approaches to get that surprise to the ear.
Yeah. So at Joe Minisar, it's like a dinosaur. He doesn't just teach music production, he trains electronic music producers, which, hey, I feel like I'm one of those. And for this one, he talks about his 20 years of arrangement experience and gives the advice in 10 minutes, and that's perfect. I like the timeline, and arrangement is something that I'd like to focus more on in some of our songwriting shows.
Absolutely.
I think it is as important as composition. The composition and arrangement go hand in hand.
Yeah. When we're talking about the different structure and just, whether it's, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, like all of that, how you're going to do a song, like how much of that you plan in advance and how much of it comes out of when you're actually just making the song. Like if you're just noodling around on the piano, this feels like a verse, like there's a time where certain things feel like a verse, or a verse that you were writing, all of a sudden you came up with a second part, but now that second part feels like the verse and that first part feels more like a chorus. So like you'll rearrange things based on, how things feel.
And that's why to be a good arranger, you should be able to adjust sometimes to what the lyricist and the singer might be trying to do. And music should mold around that sometimes. And, once in a while, that singer might need to actually mold around the arrangement. It depends on the relationship between the two.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's see what we can learn about arranging and the Lego approach and getting out of it sometimes. Because it's easy to get stuck in it.
Yep.
Your music sounds like Lego. You make a nice loop, paste it out for 5 minutes, and it sounds blocky and repetitive. It doesn't flow like an actual record, even though the loop was great. I had this problem for years, even after 2 decades of producing millions of streams and editing magazine features about arrangement. But by unlearning most of the usual advice, I figured out how to arrange great tracks without the struggles, and I help hundreds of producers do it too. So to stop you making the same mistakes I made, here are 6 arrangement lessons I wish I'd learned sooner, starting with lesson 1, which flips conventional advice on its head. I used to produce in separate stages. I'd make a loop by stacking up all my sounds vertically, then I'd paste everything out horizontally to arrange. Sometimes everything would flow nicely, other times my awesome loop would feel like Lego bricks bolted together. I call this the Lego effect, a blocky, predictable style of structure I'm sure you're familiar with. For me, the solution to this came when I realised the problem wasn't actually arranging, it was everything else around it. If you design a synth patch to evolve over a minute or two, that's sound design, but it's also arrangement. If you write chords that shift to new inversions and you change the melody, that's composing, but it's also arrangement. And when you mix one section to hit harder than another, that's mixing, but it's arrangement too. So lesson 1 is this: stop treating arrangement as its own compartmentalized stage. Structuring your song should be baked into every single decision you make, from the first sound you add to the final mix tweak. When you work like this, by the time you lay things out on the timeline, the sounds are already pulling the track forward. The act of arranging takes way less effort because everything you do and every sound you add is designed to flow and avoid the Lego effect. Okay, let's move on to lesson 2, which also goes against what many teach about writing tracks, including me. I used to teach this when I was the editor of Computer Music. Here is a tip from the December 2018 issue of the magazine. Take a reference track, use it as a template, and copy its structure. I still see people giving this advice today, and what's crazier is that producers sell DAW projects with markers laid out on a timeline. Yes, the world has gone mad. Now I get the appeal. I used to copy arrangements for years, but it always left me feeling like I hadn't allowed my tracks to grow and come to life in the way they wanted to. Just like using full splice loops or copying melodies from other songs, I was sacrificing creativity for certainty. And although copying helps with structure, it doesn't help you understand why a structure works. It wasn't until I decided to listen to my sounds and respond to what they wanted to do that I broke beyond this advice and my arrangements started unfolding naturally and organically. So lesson 2, stop borrowing other producers' arrangements. Learn to hear where your sounds want to go and allow your composition to go on the journey it wants to. The method I use to arrange without templates is called stress testing. It's a key part of my loop to track workout. Loads of producers have emailed me to tell me how game-changing this has been for them. If you want a free guide to stress testing, I've made a free cheat sheet you can download at the link below. Okay, so lesson 3. You've moved on from copying other people's structures. So how do you actually build your own? I used to make more loops than a cupboard full of Cheerios, and the more loops I made, the less tracks I finished. Until one day, I snapped. I'd had enough of being stuck in this endless loop hell with no way out. So the way I solved it was simple. To break myself out of the loop, I decided to stop making loops. Now, that doesn't mean stare at a blank project like a zombie and not do anything. To show you what I mean, here are some of my tracks from my works in progress folder. I've imported them into Live so we can look at the waveforms. And I've only imported version 1, so these are all exports from after the first initial session. And as you can see, most of these are full arrangements, and the others have at least a rough arc, so intro, drop, B section. There's not an 8-bar loop in sight, because if you think about it, a drop is not a drop without a build-up before it to give that drop the context it needs. Or a chorus without a verse isn't really a chorus at all. So lesson 3 is this: if you're sick of getting stuck in loops, stop making loops and start arranging in your first session. Make sure every idea gets extended out into something with a shape, even if you're not sure whether it's good yet. Because when you make a rough structure early, the idea immediately crystallizes into a track. It's never a loop to begin with, and then you can hear its full shape and structure and evaluate it as a piece of music, not as an 8-bar loop doomed to stay unfinished. And if you want free practical techniques to help you break out of the loop, I'll put links below to several of my videos I've made on the topic. But one of the most important techniques is lesson 4. This is the arrangement method that has changed how I think about producing. Here's another tip from that same issue of CM. It's a common tip. subtractive arranging. Paste out your full loop for the length of the song and then go through and remove sections until you have a full structure. However, over the years I've found that subtractive arranging is one of the biggest causes of the Lego effect, because pasting and removing coloured blocks is like playing with Lego. It gives you the most predictable structure possible. Well, what's the solution? Well, imagine someone performing a track live. They're not building a Lego house, they're playing keys, fading sounds in and out on a mixer, they're throwing tracks into reverb and cranking up echo feedback with their hands. And in the DAW we use automation to recreate hands and fingers changing sounds over time. Now I'm sure you use automation already, but are you doing enough? Here are some examples of my tracks, and you can see I use tons and tons of automation lanes. If I play with a control and I feel like it wants to move in a song, I record the automation in straight away. Not every track needs hundreds of automation lanes, but a good way to improve the flow of your tracks is to go too far and do more automation than you think you need, because sounds moving and changing with automation is what counteracts the Lego effect. So lesson 4 is this: whether you record automation live or draw it in, making sounds change and evolve and fade in and out over time is the antidote to formulaic, blocky arrangements. Alright, now to lesson 5. This one's a killer. Sometimes your best idea is the thing that's destroying your arrangement. This used to happen to me all the time. I'd be working on a track and I'd stumble on an amazing new sound or a new part. Then I'd spend ages rebuilding the structure around it, forcing everything else to accommodate this new shiny thing. But then I'd listen back and the track sounded way worse than before, because that sound had pulled everything in a different direction. That amazing new sound was amazing because it had its own energy and direction, and that's exactly why it wouldn't fit inside my track. This new sound was a star that needed its own stage to shine. So now when this happens, I've seen this before and I don't fight it. I drag the new sound into a new project, I'll save it and leave it for another day. Now the track I was working on gets its form back, and then I've got a second idea ready and waiting for another day. So lesson 5, don't cram too much in. If a sound is brilliant but won't fit, don't untangle your entire arrangement to squeeze it in. That's a second track asking to be started. Okay, now to lesson 6. This is something I've never seen anyone talk about in music production. Doing this will help you improve at all the lessons we've looked at so far. In the video game world, competitive gamers do something called a VOD review. They screen record their own gameplay, then they watch it back afterwards. This helps them spot their mistakes and bad habits and opportunities they missed. And this got me thinking, could this be used as a learning tool to improve our music production? So I started screen recording my sessions from start to finish, and then when I watched them back, it was a massive eye-opener, mainly for seeing how I arrange in the moment. I discovered a lot of the arrangement issues and improvements we've looked at in this video by doing this self-review process. I noticed I would keep adding more and more sounds before committing to any kind of structure. I'd stay in that vertical loop building mode for way too long. And then once I did start arranging, I wouldn't automate enough stuff to make the arrangement feel organic and flowy. I couldn't see it while I was in the middle of it, but watching it back, it was totally obvious. Once I spotted these patterns, I could fix them and improve. So self-reviewing my sessions changed how I work. This is lesson 6. If you don't know why your arrangements aren't working, record yourself and watch it back, because if you can identify the specific moment you get stuck, that becomes a problem you can work on and actually solve. If you want to do this, download something like OBS, which is free. Screen record yourself making music, then watch it back a day or two later. You'll spot arrangement habits and opportunities you've probably missed while you were in the zone. So those were the 6 arrangement lessons I wish I'd learned years ago. Stop treating arrangement as a separate stage. Don't copy other track structures. Build a shape in your first session. Automate more than you think you need. Don't let a great sound destroy a good track, and watch yourself back to spot the mistakes you usually miss. Now, if you want the full system I use to go from loop to finished track, that's what the loop to track workout is for. It trains you how to finish tracks through structured reps until arranging stops feeling like a fight. Hundreds of producers are already getting great results. Check it out at looptotrack.com or at the link below. And if you want 3 actionable tactics to help you bust out of any loop, go and watch this video right here.
Oh, I do want them.
Absolutely.
There's some great tips in that. 20 years of arrangement knowledge in 10 minutes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
For
that last
real.
one is huge. I mean, that last one is huge in many fields. Being open to reviewing yourself, and being open to seeing what mistakes you're making, how you can improve the process. It is something that would be an eye opener, because most people don't watch or don't pay attention to how much time they waste when they're doing these things. But again, it's also about, are you sitting down to spend an hour or more arranging and doing things like that, or are you just kind of spending a few minutes here and then going watching YouTube, and then spending a few minutes here and going and doing that? Because some people are scattered in their work, but if you're focused on the work, record that and go back and review that, because it will be an eye opener.
Oh, I've done that to try to put together tutorials and things, and it helps you to focus on your timeline and your workflow. And he's absolutely right. And the automation tip,
yeah, very much,
is another one that nowadays people are getting accustomed to hearing more mixing dynamics in their music, and you kind of have to up your game there. You can't get lazy and do that Lego approach and just copy and paste and never automate. Your music's going to sound flat. You need to do those rises, the different levels and things you can change, bring some of that dynamics in after.
Yeah. And what he was saying about doing too much automation is better than not enough, I totally agree with that. And don't forget, you can do too much of the automation, and if it is too much, you can just go back and selectively
you can turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. And it's still there, and you can turn it back on if you need to. Absolutely. Different sections, you want verse 1 to sound different than verse 2. You add this one little element in there, and it sounds like totally changes everything.
Yeah, the one that I think I related to the most, that I laughed when he mentioned it, because I've had this problem where you come up with a part as you're making the song, and if it is one of those parts where it's like, oh my God, this is so good, now I'm going to force the rest of the song to do that. Sometimes you just got to accept this is another song. So I wrote a song while I was in the middle of making another one.
Or 2 or 3. I mean, we've had that happen where we're in the middle of doing something and somebody noodles off something else that's different, and we love that too, but it's totally different feel than what we were doing, and it doesn't really go, and it's not really another part of the same song, so it needs to be something else, but you don't want to lose it. So you definitely record some of it and you come back to it later, or you end up with one project that has like 18 songs in it.
And you don't want to lose the original idea that you started with just because now you got another idea.
Because it's already come along while you're in this session.
Yeah. Great advice, Joe. Big fan of arrangement. And as I go down that rabbit hole, I'll be back. I love the advice.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to get into lyrics and approach there. Angie's working on that Breaking the Barrier show, and it's going to be all about lyrical analysis. And this is one that we could devote a whole night to. We'll see how that Breaking the Barriers go. And this one's coming from a great channel for songwriting. We've been here on our songwriting nights. At HTWS, he makes it nice and short. How to write songs, and he's one of the piano team and Singio, and all those great channels for teaching. He's one of the instructors. Great one.
Nice.
And here it's a lyric writing trick that is 4,000 years old, and as he goes into it, you're going to be like, yeah, wow, we've been writing lyrics for a long time, and this is a good trick.
Stands the test of time, and 4,000 years is quite a bit of time to be testing. Yeah.
And for those who don't want to work hard, it's easy.
There you go. Easy is good.
Yes.
There are rhetorical devices and literary techniques that have been around for thousands of years. And the earliest documented uses of this particular technique I want to look at today appeared in the oral poetry of ancient Sumerian and Egyptian civilizations around 2000 BC. And everyone since, from Shakespeare to Dylan, has been using this technique to amplify the impact of their words. So in this video, I want to talk about this ancient technique and demonstrate some ways you can use it to immediately level up your lyric writing. So the technique we're focusing on is called alliteration. And alliteration is defined as a rhetorical and literary device characterized by the repetition of the same initial consonant sound in two or more adjacent or closely connected words within a phrase. And you've heard the effect of this technique in famous tongue twisters. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. There you can really hear the repetition of that plosive P sound. And interestingly, the tongue twister reveals one of the challenges with using alliteration effectively, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Firstly, let's talk about why we care. Why do we as songwriters care about a technique such as alliteration? Well, in lyric writing and really in all communication, there are two main considerations: what we're saying and how we're saying it. What we are saying is, of course, incredibly important. The topic or the narrative or the theme, that's important for us to get a handle on. But what we're focusing on here is how we're saying it. And it's so important that when we're writing our lyrics and rewriting our lyrics, we're painfully aware of these two considerations. That it's not enough to just say something interesting. We have to find impactful ways of saying it. And what we know about alliteration is it makes the language stick. It makes it memorable. It makes it catchy. And the beauty of alliteration is it's so simple. The corporate world and marketing professionals have been well aware of its impact for a long time. Whenever you hear a famous company name or brand, you'll often hear alliteration embedded in the structure of the name. Coca-Cola, PayPal. And some of those famous slogans like power to the people arguably owe their enduring legacy to this simple technique. Of course, Shakespeare was a huge fan of alliteration. You only have to look at the prologue of Romeo and Juliet to see how much the famous playwright lent on this technique. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes. So what about songwriting examples? Well, in the Beatles' Let It Be, we've got whisper words of wisdom. Or in Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi, we get they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. And Joni Mitchell's song really brings us back to the idea of the tongue twister that I was talking about earlier, because it almost sounds like a tongue twister. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. And the reason it sounds like a tongue twister is because of the frequency of the alliteration. So we have 5 occurrences of that P sound in what is a fairly short line. And the effect is almost comical and silly, which might have been the effect that Joni Mitchell was going for. But it shows us that we need to be careful with overusing the technique, or overusing any technique for that matter, because if the technique becomes too obvious, if it feels like the technique is the point, then it becomes a distraction for the listener, and it actually gets in the way of the listener really hearing the message you're trying to communicate. And while we're talking about lyrics, I just want to pause and let you know about an exciting new program we're launching for the very first time. It's a 2-week lyric writing program. In those 2 weeks, you'll be focusing on advanced lyric writing techniques. You'll have time with Kepi and myself. There'll be masterclasses. There'll be accountability sessions. There'll be a cohort of like-minded songwriters for you to connect with and interact with. And at the end of those 2 weeks, you'll have a collection of techniques and methods to really level up your lyric writing. So if you're interested, you'll find the link below. So thinking about the tongue twister and looking at Joni Mitchell's lyric gives us an insight into a key consideration with using alliteration, and that is frequency. How often are we using the technique in the phrase? The other big consideration for us to think about is placement. Where is the alliteration appearing throughout the phrase? We'll come back to placement in a minute. If we just stay with frequency a little longer, we'll see that with alliteration, a little bit goes a long way. In the first verse of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, we have picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Just the sound of those two T's, tangerine trees, is enough to feel the effect of alliteration in that verse. The chorus of another Joni Mitchell song, Both Sides Now, is a beautiful demonstration of alliteration in action. I've looked at love from Both Sides Now. Again, just two of the L sounds pairing up there. And this is a nice moment to talk about the sounds that we're actually hearing. Tangerine trees are hard edge sounds, plosive sounds. Paved paradise put up a parking lot. Again, plosive sounds. Looked at love, the L sound. Whisper words of wisdom, the W sound. Those are softer, and they're doing a job to support the message of the song. Whisper words of wisdom is the kind of sentiment or the kind of message that feels beautifully supported by a softer sound. If you put a hard plosive in there, it may be too aggressive, it may be too hard for the sentiment that is being communicated. Again, looked at love from Both Sides Now. It's a love song. It's a song about reflection. The hard edge of the plosive may not serve the message of the song in that moment. So when you're creating these moments of alliteration, or when you're inserting alliteration into your lyrics, be mindful of the actual sound of the letters that you're using. Consider whether they're hard or soft, and consider whether you need one or the other to support the message you're communicating. Just going back to Both Sides Now, that entire chorus is a beautiful example of alliteration, because we get, I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow. The still somehow is another alliteration moment with the two S's. And then we get a return to these L sounds. It's love's illusions, I recall. I really don't know love at all. So the L sound is being used heavily here. Joni Mitchell's really leaning into the warmth and the roundness of that L sound to help deliver the message. And it's only being counterpointed by the two S's in the middle. So that gives us a good sense of frequency. Now I want to go back to placement, and I want to look at the first verse of Let It Be. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. This is a great example of minimal alliteration being used in each line, but in different positions in the line, different placements. When I find myself in times of trouble, here we have alliteration appearing at the end of the line, and it really closes off the line. It's the finisher of the line. The next line, we have it at the very beginning. Mother Mary comes to me. And the feeling we get when we hear alliteration at the beginning of the line is that it gives the whole line a little push. It gives it momentum from that first moment. Speaking words of wisdom. Now we return to placement at the end of the line. And so you can hear we've got end line, beginning of line, end line again, toggling back and forth between these different placements. And so alliteration appearing at the end of the line really finishes off the phrase and completes it. When it appears at the beginning, it gives us a little momentum push, a little moment of propulsion. When it appears in the middle, it has a slightly different effect, but it still creates momentum that carries us through to the end of the phrase. And we've already heard this in effect with Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. That little tangerine tree moment at the halfway point really grabs our attention and keeps us engaged in the line so that we stick with it to the end. So at what point is using alliteration most effective? Because it's arguably not effective to really think about how to use alliteration at the beginning of the songwriting process. At the beginning of the songwriting process, we're trying to define what we're talking about. We're trying to find a theme or a topic or a narrative that we're really interested in exploring. At that point, worrying about these kind of techniques can actually be detrimental to the process. So instead, think about using alliteration when you're starting to do a rewrite or when you're starting to look at a second version, taking that first draft and transforming it into language that feels more impactful, finding more interesting ways of phrasing your lyrics or communicating an idea. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to do the unthinkable and actually take the Joni Mitchell lyric from Both Sides Now and just mess with it a little bit to show what it might have looked like as a first draft. So we've got that final chorus, I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take and still somehow. It's love's illusions, I recall. I really don't know love at all. What if I just remove some of that alliteration? Starting with the first line, instead of looked at love, Let me change it to I've stared at love from both sides now. From give and take and yet somehow. So I'm taking away one of the S's and again removing the alliteration. It's love's deception, I recall. I didn't know love at all. So there's a version of that chorus that you could imagine as a first draft. I've stared at love from both sides now, from give and take and yet somehow. It's love's deception, I recall. I didn't know love at all. It's really close. In terms of the message, it's pretty similar. I've just replaced a few words, but this is the point, that taking the message and then finding the most beautiful, interesting, effective way of communicating that message is really what alliteration is there to do, as with all of the rhetorical devices. That's what they're there to do. And this is our job as songwriters when we're reviewing our lyrics and trying to take it from first draft to a second or a third version. It's to look at each line and consider if there are any opportunities to insert alliteration or to rework the rhyme scheme or to substitute a word for a different word, a word with a little more impact, a little more interest. Once we're clear on what we're trying to say in our lyrics, we're then looking for opportunities to change how we say it. And if we go back to the beautiful phrasing that Joni Mitchell uses, you can feel the rhythm of it. You can feel the flow of it because of the alliteration. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take and still somehow. It's love's illusions, I recall. I really don't know love at all. It sounds more poetic. It feels more rhythmic. It's just beautiful to listen to. And this is the power of alliteration. And this is why I encourage you to really experiment with it, play with it, be aware of the frequency, be aware of the placement, and see if you can take a first draft to a beautiful, interesting second draft just using this technique. Happy songwriting. Bye.
Damn, Ben, we're getting some good advice tonight.
Absolutely. One of my favorites is always Werewolves of London. Little old lady got mutilated late last night. You get that whole little run right there.
Well, and the different approaches that you can take to it. I like how he showed using it at the end, at the beginning.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to the other things we saw tonight where the accents are happening, and if you're utilizing this in your lyric writing, it is really effective in some cases, or in poetry. Poetry, you get a lot of opportunities to play with this technique.
Yeah, and I really like the kind of walking it back to the first draft and then the second draft. Like here's how the idea may have come about. Who knows how the ideas actually came about, but the idea being if you have something that sounds kind of plain or regular, you can make it sound this way by just changing a word here and there to get the alliteration in there.
Yeah, and when you first start with a song and you've got if you are starting with like lyrics, because sometimes that's the approach, you've got these words and you're trying to make everything fit to these words. And sometimes you do have to adjust the words or in some cases pull the alliteration out.
Yeah. That was the other part I was going to mention.
Suggestion there was spot on. Like, it's good to see it from both sides and decide, is this going to work properly this way, or should I remove that?
And there are times it'll bump into other things, like you have problems because the title of the song already has alliteration in it, like a Sneaking Sally Through the Alley, is just had the double S's at the beginning, right? But if you all of a sudden in different verses, if you're throwing a lot of S's in there, it can be too much. So you don't want to do that.
Oh, and you better have a good S filter.
Exactly.
We had a song last night where I was like, oh my God, they need to use a filter.
A de-esser, yeah. And then if you're going to do the Peter Piper song, you got to have a pop filter.
Yeah. And the plosives was, a good point that he hit there too.
For sure.
These guys are so good with the songwriting. Kepi and Ben, you kick ass at HTWS. You will learn how to be a songwriter here.
How to write songs.
Yeah. And now we've got an interesting piece of software here. If this solves this problem for me since the 80s. I've always hated sequencing. I love recording on the piano with mics, natural, but when it comes to sequencing, I don't always hit on the tempo. That's part of like sometimes I slow down, sometimes I speed up. With classical music, there's no steady tempo sometimes on the piano, and sequencing can be a pain in the ass because it wants to quantize and fix what I don't want fixed. So I always turn that off.
Quantize
And
life out of things. Yeah.
and when I do want to use a part, like I don't want to play this for 3 minutes, I managed to get the part in there. Trying to get it to loop cleanly can be difficult because sometimes I go a half measure extra on something, and it's hard to loop things unless there's a natural transition between the loop.
Sure.
I'm hoping that from what I'm seeing with what this software does, this is going to be a nice bridge between natural playing and a little bit of step sequencing. And if it feels like it's natural when I'm punching it on the screen, that's what I'm looking for. So this is at Signs of Life, although the I's are ones and the O's are zeros.
Nice.
And this is a freshie channel. Couldn't ignore the software because I've been waiting for it for 30 years. So I really want to know more about Stellarizer, performance to pattern MIDI sequencing.
Nice.
And it's a manual.
Okay, welcome to Stellarizer, a performance to pattern MIDI sequencer by Signs of Life. Stellarizer is designed to bridge the gap between improvisation and traditional step sequencing. Instead of programming a pattern one note at a time, you begin by playing something naturally. Stellarizer captures the timing, pitch contour, velocity, note length, and sustain gestures of that performance, and then transforms it into an entire constellation of related musical ideas. You can preserve the identity of the original phrase, gently reshape its rhythm or contour, reduce it into a sparse ambient pulse, reorganize its structure, or travel much further into completely new territory. Throughout this video, I'll show you how to capture a performance, prepare the sequence, use the shape controls, explore and evolve patterns, save presets, return to previous ideas using recordings, and finally, drag your finished MIDI directly into the DAW. It's important to understand that Stellarizer does not generate audio. It generates MIDI, so it must be routed into a software instrument, hardware synthesizer, or another MIDI destination. Let's begin by setting up the signal flow and capturing our first performance. Okay, so this is the video manual for Stellarizer. Now, Stellarizer is a performance to pattern MIDI sequencer, and it covers the space in between improvisation and actual step sequencer programming. So your captured performance becomes the musical source for your step sequence. Stellarizer creates its own related variations rather than a bunch of random unrelated notes. And I want to make it clear that Stellarizer does not generate audio, it generates MIDI, okay? So that's what Stellarizer is. It's basically a brand new type of MIDI sequencer. I've never seen anything like it. So in this video, I'm going to show you what Stellarizer can do and then how you guys can utilize it in your own productions. All right. So first things first, I'm using Ableton Live here, and your DAW may differ. So I'm going to go over the setup for all the different DAWs and scenarios. So I'm going to drag Stellarizer onto its own track here. Okay. And again, I'm in Ableton Live on Windows. So I'm going to be using the VST3 version. And if you're on any other DAW on Windows, you'll probably use the VST3. But on the Mac side, I've built not only the audio unit for every other DAW that's not Logic Pro, and then for Logic Pro, it has the special MIDI effects version. So depending on your DAW, that's what version of Stellarizer you're going to install and use. Now, Stellarizer is here. It's just waiting for me to play something into Stellarizer. I can go ahead and just play the background track. You can see Stellarizer starts playing. We got a playhead here. There's a bunch of different tabs here. We've got shape control, whole patterns. These are gonna light up as soon as we start playing. We've got presets here, so you can save your presets, export entire banks, share them with others. And of course, we have this recordings tab, which we're going to come back to later. All right, so first things first, I'm going to set the capture to on. Now let's go over setup here, okay? So I've got Stellarizer on its own track. And again, this is Ableton Live here, all right? Now I'm sending this MIDI to another track here. This is a track that just has pigments with a very simple sine wave here, just kind of, you know, waiting to be played through, okay? And again, I've got this MIDI from here. I can choose Stellarizer. And then under the pre and post effects, I can select Stellarizer as my source here, okay? And the monitor is set to in. Again, this is Ableton Live, but I'm gonna be recording onto the Stellarizer track, all right? I'll go ahead and turn down the send effects here. So back in Stellarizer, I can go ahead and hit play here. And because I've turned on the capture, Stellarizer is waiting for me to start playing, okay? The start on note is the default here. So it's just kind of waiting for me to, you know, play some MIDI input so Stellarizer can start capturing. Before we get there though, I want to go over some of the setup here. So we've got quantize. You can quantize it from 1/8 notes all the way down to 1 bar. That's cool. We've got key and scale here. So I'll select a natural minor. As you can see, the scale lock is now engaged. Okay, so it not only can quantize your notes, but it can also set the key and scale. That's cool. And we've got capture length, which is the total amount that Stellarizer can capture. You can go from 1 bar free running or all the way up to 32 bars here. And then the sequence length can be set to the same. I'll set it to 2 bars. All right, so let's go ahead and play some notes. And as you can see, Stellarizer has captured my performance here in this window, like this beautiful constellation. The brighter orbs are the velocity. The tails here are the duration of the notes. So, you know, I mean, if you wanted this to be it, you could just drag this out to MIDI. As you can see, we got full on drag and drop MIDI here. That's cool. So the MIDI has come in via Ableton's drag and drop function. That's awesome, right? I really wanted to accomplish that, but Stellarizer does that and a whole lot more. So let's go back to Stellarizer here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over to the shape tab here, and I'll start molding and shaping this sequence like clay. Like I said in the beginning, like this is unlike any other MIDI sequencer that I've ever seen. So we've got contour controls here. Look at this. And as you can see, it now starts to diverge from that original source. Okay, the source is back here in purple, and our cyan color is our new variation. Okay, how cool is that? We can adjust the density, so you can take out some of the notes here. So you can literally just come up with brand new sequences here on the fly after you've captured them. Listen to this, I'll turn up some delay and reverb. Oh yeah. We can completely shift the octave up here at the top. How cool is this? Like, I've never seen anything like this, and now it's here. It was a crazy idea, but it actually works. We can adjust the articulation, which randomly adjusts the duration of some of the notes. Okay, that's interesting. And again, this is all getting printed to MIDI, so we can drag it out to our DAW at any time. The structure is really crazy. So it completely shifts the entire pattern. That's neat. We've got rhythm control, so we can start shifting and molding these. And again, if quantize is on, then it's gonna stay right in the grid, so you'll always be locked in. Love that, okay? Now, I wanna move over to the recordings tab for just a minute, because every single pattern and every single knob movement that I've made has recorded something in the pattern recording window. So check this out. All these beautiful constellations are being built in real time depending on what you're doing in Stellarizer. So as you can see, it shows you exactly what was going on here. Every single knob movement, you can have up to 30 different recordings. You can restore the recording back to source, and you can drag these recordings back to MIDI. So if you think, oh, I really had something cool like a couple, moves ago, you can just drag that recording right to the MIDI window. All right, so let's go back to shape. As you can see, you can mutate the variation ever so slightly. Let's go ahead and turn down our octave again. You can completely regenerate the source, so you can like start from a brand new signal if you want, okay? And then let's go over to the patterns. Now patterns is really cool, okay? So patterns is like these preset patterns that you can use to further shape the entire experience of Stellarizer. So we got Anchor here, check this out. So Anchor brings it back to the original source. It's the closest that you can get to pulling your sequence back to your original recording, right? And then if we want to, we can click on Reroll, and that will re-roll the anchor, okay? Very cool. We can click on Sparse Signal here, which minimizes all those notes and really kind of gives it that distant feel. It can sound amazing on really long sequences, right? And if you want to, you can re-roll this. So each pattern can be re-rolled to provide you with a different variation here. Love that. So then we've got Echo Field here, which provides some little different, articulation and rhythmic displacement, which is really interesting. Okay? And again, you could just play with this forever. You could re-roll it. You could come down here to Evolve Far and completely change your sequence. Like, how cool is this, right? We can click on Anchor and we're right back into where we started. We've got Syncopated Orbit, which moves the attacks and introduces, an off-center kind of feel to it. Oh yeah, so good. Love it. Contour Arc is one of my favorite because it focuses on pitch relationships and melodic direction. So check this out. Kind of puts more notes in there. You can re-roll that. And again, if we want to go back to where we started, just hit on it, hit Anchor. It's all good. And then Fragmented, which really kind of fragments it out. It disperses all the notes here. Love that. We can click on Reframed, which completely shifts the sequence almost beyond what it was before. And then we've got Deep Space here, which really blisses it out. And again, this can sound really good on sequences, that are like 4 bars, 8 bars. There's so much you can do here. Now, from here, you can send this back to the shape. Like if I'm happy with this, I can send it back to the shape. And as you can see, now our original shape here is basically exactly what it was in the patterns window, but now we can continue to mold and shape it with the rhythm, density, contour, articulation, structure, everything that we had before. And again, our original source is still back there untouched, right? So that's patterns. Patterns are great ways to explore new sequences, shift and move them around. You can evolve them. And as you can see, you can select on and off the pitch, rhythm, density, right, and articulation. So if you don't want your pitch to change and you want to continue messing with the density, you can do that with these sliders right here. Okay, so now we've got presets over here. You can continue to just make your own presets, save them as new. You got different categories. You can import different banks. Of course, I'll be making presets for Stellarizer, and I'm sure you guys will too. And of course, you can export the banks right here, and you got access to your user folder. Now, as you can see here, all of these recordings have been saved in Stellarizer. So now we've got almost 30 recordings here. And again, I could go back to that. I can say, well, you know what? I really like this. So let's go ahead and drag this recording to MIDI here. Go ahead and drag this out. You can, create a whole bank here. Maybe we like this one. We liked, let's go with this one, right? Oh, I love that one. Let's go with this one. So now we've got a whole bank of MIDI clips. You could save these MIDI clips, You could do the Ableton follow actions if that's your thing, right? So we can say, all right, well, let's go to this one, go to this one. We can select all 3 of these here. Let's go to monitor in. We'll play this first one. Now here in Ableton, of course, I have follow actions. So I can set the randomize and say, maybe just go to any, right? And all of them now are linked. And so it's gonna play through and go to the next one. How cool is this? You can create entire banks. It is a completely new class of MIDI sequencer. I'm so excited that Stellarizer is finally here. And again, going all the way back to our original source, right? So cool. So let's continue on with our track here, knowing that we now have Stellarizer doing its thing. We've exported 3 different MIDI clips here from Stellarizer, okay? So let's go ahead and put Stellarizer on another track, all right? So let's go ahead and put another sequence here. Let's go grab, say, Pigments again. I love this. So much fun. Now, Stellarizer is not just for sequences. I want to make that clear too. We've already had some of the beta team put it on pads. You could put it on percussion perhaps. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with Stellarizer. It's crazy, right? So let's go ahead and grab a sequence here from Chromatic 5. Let's use, say, Relay. That's a good one. Oh yeah. Let's use Relay here. Lower down the LFO a little bit. There we go. All right, so again, MIDI from is gonna come from Stellarizer. Stellarizer here, set the monitor to in. Oh yeah. Let's go ahead and record another sequence here into Stellarizer. I'll set the quantize to 16th notes. I'll go ahead and clear this, hit the capture on button. Here we go. Oh yeah. So as you can see, it's already, capturing and quantizing it at 16th notes. We can shape and mold this to whatever we want. Oh yeah, so much fun. Oh yeah, perfect. Little octave spread here. Turn on some delay and reverb. That is just incredible. My goodness. And again, those are probably saved on the recordings. Yup, of course they are. Oh man, we're going beyond 30. I love it. I love it. So, like I said, this is Stellarizer. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I am so excited about the future of this plugin because we're just getting started. As you can see, I'm releasing this as beta software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release this at 50% off for a limited time for a beta. So you guys can go grab the code. It's going to be right on the product page. Grab the code, play with it, see what you can do with it. Maybe send me some ideas about what you think it could be, and let me know how it goes because I'm really excited about the future of this platform. And yeah. On and on into the future we go. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I mean, like I said, this is a brand new sequencer. I don't know if anyone's ever done something like this before, but it's here now. So I can't wait to hear what you guys make with it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And yeah, I look forward to more videos just like this one in the future. In the meantime, take good care, you guys. Enjoy Stellarizer. And as always, keep your heads in the clouds and your feet planted firmly on the ground. I am Chris from Signs of Life. And I'll see you guys in the next video.
Oh my God, Chris, that is the coolest MIDI thing I've seen this year. Actually, even last this kind of approach for a sequencer, I've been waiting my whole life for.
Those recordings, all those different patterns and all that, it's MIDI, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's not eating your hard drive. It's just a couple, little bits of data, but it's just great that it keeps them in that format, so you can just jump right back to them real quick.
Oh, this is lightweight as hell, and it works pretty much on everything. Beautifully designed. I love the visual approach, the sound. The beauty with MIDI is you get to do whatever you want in sound, and how you start there, and being able to. I could see using that as much for a drum machine as for piano playing.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the ambient and that was very soothing. I just felt myself relaxing as I'm listening to it.
I felt like I was in space. Stellarizer is a great name for it.
Exactly, and I love the representation too, with the notes having the tails. Showing you how impactful each note was. So you can see which ones, just at a glance, you can see which ones are going to last and which ones are going to decay very quickly.
I'm finding more and more that visualizing is part of the music making process these days. Like whether it's the EQ and the colors there, or like as I'm sequencing and how things tail
And the automation lanes. I mean, again,
yeah.
I think all of us need to automate more. That's one of those things. Like once you see a lot of automation going on, and you don't want to overdo it. There are ways you can overcook things, so you don't want to do that. But it is all the different types of things that you can do with automation are things that you should try to do with automation at some point, because knowing how to do them, getting comfortable with how to do them, having them in there so you can turn them off if it's too much, but have it in there so that it's available if it is something that is needed.
Yeah, it helps you to understand all those knobs that we used to have on mixers and controllers. And if you do actually have the right controllers, like these MIDI ones, you can turn on right automation and just actually move it on there, and DAW will record that as automation,
And that's the
which
thing, is it doesn't even
is a
have to be,
great way to do it.
and it doesn't have to be a fancy controller either. Pretty much anything is going to have knobs on it. So anything that you can hook up that would work, it'll have a knob or a dial, and you can use that knob or a dial and say, hey, memorize, and move that knob or dial, and it goes, oh, that one, sure. And like now you mapped it, in different paths. You can do that.
What's awesome with mapping MIDI controllers, you could, this Stellarizer, you could map the knobs there, two knobs on a MIDI controller, and hey, there's an idea. This sequencer kicks so much ass that if you make a nice little box MIDI controller for it, I love the options that are in there, and it'd be awesome to have. I would get a dedicated Stellarizer controller because it would just speed things up.
Yeah, absolutely. And even something like the Axiom that I have that has the 8 pads on it for the finger drumming. It's got 8 dials as well, and those dials could be set for things that you want. It's got the mod wheel and all that for regular stuff.
You can tell that dial to change that particular dial on the plugin.
Yeah, exactly. And like that page that had the 6 different dials, like that could be 6 of those knobs right there.
The nice thing with that controller is there's a learn button.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you have the right DAW, you don't actually have to know the shit that I used to have to know. Like you had to know the MIDI controller ID and the number and now it's learn. Turn the dial. Wow. Now the dial actually turns.
Exactly. They figured out that it's easier just to ask you, like, which one, and then it gets the input. That one? Oh, here.
Yeah, we'll have to do. Yeah, we'll have to do a MIDI controller programming night. I'll see if I can get Sems. He's the MIDI master.
Nice.
And Frank, you'd be a big help there too.
I'm starting to get this place set up where I've got the Axiom controller over here. I've got the Carbon C61 out in the other room there. I'm going to bring that in at some point, get that set up. I am getting this place, squared away. It's one of those things where I got everything moved in, and now it's a matter of going through all the stuff and getting, figuring out what goes where, but everything is in the room it needs to be in at this point. It's just a matter of getting it a little better organized.
The studio is coming.
It is coming. It's getting there.
It is all gathered at this point, so now it's more just setup.
Exactly.
So that was at Signs of Life, S1 GNS 0F L1FE. Right. I did an inch there. I spelled it out. But that is some really cool looking software. Gonna be checking it out this weekend. I will beta test the Shhh I.T out of that. I've been waiting my whole life for a sequencer that actually, now I can see for a sequencer that actually understands me that way.
We have the bigger view, right? So we had the studio is coming together where we have the acoustic or electric or this one. Yeah, the Glary is over here with it's like an Ovation. So that lives over back here behind me. We've got the SG's over here right behind the nameplate. I've got the Fender 5-string back here. Got the keyboard right behind me, but you can't really see it because it's a little low. Got the drums back here. So
Jimmy is babysitting that.
Yeah, Jimmy's keeping an eye on all of it. Gotta have a look. But this was needed to get OBS reinstalled and re-put back in. So We've got OBS, so we can do a couple things like that going. And I'll get the other camera set up one of these days, so we can actually have a different view as well.
Hey, now you can zoom in and out. That's a start.
That's a start. Yeah, we're getting there. Got some lighting on the scene. You know, zoom in and out. Just need to get a little bit higher camera angle. I'll be good.
I need to get higher.
But not too high.
I mean that literally, not figuratively.
You're a child.
That was a good exploration there into the rules and the alternatives.
Yep.
I wouldn't say rule breaking. I would say adjusting.
Yeah. And as he said, like, you know, you can supersede a rule with another rule, because some rules are, you know, you can borrow from here. You can do this occasionally. Same thing with chromaticism. You know, you can throw in chromaticism wherever you want. And technically that's borrowing notes that don't have any business being in that chord, but you're just using them as passing tones. And passing tones can, you know, they don't have any rules other than just, you know, don't use them all the time. And you can put them in and they sound fine.
What are those instruments that have the half steps between the half steps?
Sure. Some of them, I mean,
chromatic. What do they call those?
Well, on fretless instruments is one thing. Like, so like on a fretless, you can get into all those notes. But if you had something like the one that they played,
well, there's certain Asian instruments that are designed to like hit
sitar
notes.
I was thinking about, but with the sitar, it's not only does it have the, you know, twice as many notes as what we have, because it's got notes in between all the notes that we have, but it also has sympathetic strings that when you're playing these strings, there are other strings that will vibrate and react to those sounds as well. So that's where you get that whole kind of chorus effect going on.
I like that approach. I've heard certain guitars that Steve Vai has one that does that, and some pianos that have actually been designed to have sympathetic strings.
Yeah, I like the approach. The one thing that I do see about that is, if it comes to a stringed instrument, is it's like with a 12 string. It's just that many more strings that can go out of tune, and if they're slightly out of tune in those situations, they won't react the way they're supposed to. So with sympathetic strings, like if this one's E and this one's not quite E, they're not going to react the way they should.
Hey, if I'm writing a horror music score, that might be the exact kind of dissonance I want.
Yeah, and that's where you got that bend. You can get that bend to be just a little eerie.
Yeah, if only I could get a whammy bar on a piano.
You can.
I know, but it's not a real piano.
You can make it feel like a piano, and you can have a controller where you can get a whammy sound. Make it sound authentic. Did you ever see did we ever look at the whammy caster at that point? There was some where they had a whammy bar that was basically like a big coil spring, so that like you would hit a note and then you go like, it was just totally crazy, but it was called the whammy caster or something like that.
We did see a guy who built his own guitar, and basically the guitar was the whammy.
That's the way to do it.
If I shake it, it sounds like it's being shook.
Exactly.
All right, well, we're getting ready for the weekend. I got a Spider-Man movie that I've been waiting all year to watch.
Very cool.
It's finally here. Thank you, Jason. It's kind of a birthday present for me. And happy birthday again, Jason.
Happy birthday,
Jeremy, and Luke. Love all of you.
Yes, indeed.
So we'll be back on Monday. Muckery's been kicking off. It's an extension of Wednesday. So we're partying on Monday, and Wally be there with motivation. And then Tuesday, still shuffling around. I think the Breaking the Barriers might be starting to come around, and then whipping it out on Wednesday. She is killing it over there.
All right. Always good.
Then we'll be back again.
Yep, that's the way that works on Thursday.
So we'll see you then.
Take care, everyone.
Night, everyone.
We cover digital, audio workstations and music tools. We explore theory, gear and MIDI too. How to arrange, compose, and the art of arranging. Taking a look at AI and how the times have changed. On a PC or a Mac, and even with a mobile device, we'll be talking about it all every Thursday night. From software to plugins and synths that entice. Dive deep into tech and let creativity take flight. Talkin Shhh I.T. We're talking Shhh I.T. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. From bedroom producers to seasoned pros, we're breaking it down so knowledge grows. Whether you're a DJ or a beat making wizard, we got the tips and tricks to make your sound sizzle. Mixing and mastering, that's our jam. We'll do tutorials and tips on how much rap. Get the best quality from your setup and gear. Tune in every week and lend us your ear. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. We're talking